We shall find out, because something important to do first. Rachael Venables is here with a story that I'll be straight with you, Rach, when Ava, the producer, explained it to me, not for the first time with some of your journalism, I couldn't believe my ears.
It's a difficult one, this one, and I think what's really interesting is the more I've looked at this story, the more I've realised that there are many, many more people around the country who are in this position. But I want to talk to you about one specific case, which is a tower block called Zenith House. It's on Zenith Close in Colindale in North London. And this story also has its roots in the tragedy at Grenfell, which, you know, shook housing regulations, the housing industry to its core, and after which thousands of buildings around the country were also found to have similarly unsafe flammable cladding. So last year, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors brought in something called an ESW1 certificate. Now, at first, it was meant to be just for buildings over 18 metres tall, although changes in government guidance since has actually seen lenders wanting all buildings with cladding to get this certificate. But basically it proves that the building is safe. Now, in this instance in Zenith House in Colindale, residents waited about 6 months for the form to be carried out to get the results. Without this form, they can't sell their flats. Lenders won't lend against it. And the results themselves were damning. The tests revealed a slew of problems, as Jonathan, who lives up on the 11th floor, explains.
It hasn't got cavity barriers around the windows, which was one of the problems and issues that Grenfell had. It doesn't have the correctly installed cement particle board, which is behind the cladding. And basically it just means that this is a fire danger, this block of flats. Yeah, it's frightening going to bed each night thinking, you know, could something happen, and how am I going to get out if it did go up in flames?
And just to be slightly technical, it was rated a B2. That means there are combustible materials in the walls and an adequate standard of safety is not achieved, as you heard him describing there. High-rise buildings are built, they're meant to be built with a system of compartmentalisation. So the idea is a fire can break out in one flat and it should be able to rage, to burn, in plenty of time for the fire brigade to get there and put it out.
Because they're concrete effectively,
blocks.
And it's self-contained.
Yeah, and it shouldn't spread outside the building. It shouldn't spread inside the building. Without cavity barriers, though, that's not the case. The fire could spread up the outside of the building. The residents at risk, it means that the stay put advice has been dropped. A waking watch has been brought in, so you've got fire marshals patrolling the building. That, though, of course, expensive just for the man hours. And the residents don't yet know, actually, if they'll have to end up paying for all of this.
Thousands of £1,000s extra each year. The fire alarm, the new fire alarm, is going to be an extra £1,100, they're saying. Financially, that's crippling to fund these interim measures to just keep us safe, and told that, you know, it might be passed on to us and they can't rule it out passing on to us. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And certainly for a lot of the people that live here, speaking to them, they will guaranteed face financial ruin from that. It's going to be some really hard decisions for people about general lifestyle choices and general sacrifices about food and you know, their lifestyle and family that they'll have to make to be able to just pay these costs if they are passed on to us.
Now, Jonathan wants to sell up, move on, move out. I think a lot of people, certainly in lockdown, particularly people in flats, you know, have started to realise that maybe it's the time to upsize a little bit. He certainly wants to leave London and get a place with a garden, perhaps start a family. But he can't. Residents have been told the process could take up to 42 months to fix. And in the meantime, because they don't have this certificate, their flats are effectively worthless.
Just at that point in my life now where I'm in my early 30s and I'm settled and I want to move on and get a family home and move out of London and just move on with the next, you know, stage of my life. And I just now have realised that I can't do that. And essentially myself and all my other residents that are pretty much in the same situation, kind of young professionals, getting to that same stage now that they want to now sell up and move on, and everyone is stuck. And we feel basically prisoners in our own homes.
And as far as the bank is concerned, what is the value of this place? How much are they prepared to lend against it?
Well, mortgage lenders have been advised to basically not offer mortgages, and chartered surveyors have been told to value this as nil value, so completely worthless. So when I bought this flat, I put all my savings into it, got a mortgage, and it was a financial investment for myself, but also invest in my future. And then basically 6-7 years later, just be told in an email, your flat is worthless. It was, it's devastating news, and the impact that's had on myself and everyone is, well, I can't really describe it, but it's been awful.
Oh dear. I mean, he's a correspondent's dream, so articulate and informed. But that's that's 3.5 years.
Yeah.
On a hamster wheel, on a treadmill, not making any progress or movement at all. And you know, you don't have to drive past Grenfell every day to understand why he goes to bed frightened every night.
It's the dual pain here, really, isn't it? It's the fear for himself. It's the fear
he's locked in, isn't he? Almost.
They can't sell. They can't move on. The freeholder the building's freeholder. That's a housing association called Notting Hill Genesis. They have said that they're working, with the original developers to agree at a programme of works. In the meantime, they say they're supporting the residents as much as they can. They are allowing them permission to sublet, so residents could sublet their flats and move on, but they're still financially tied in.
Position of being a potentially unscrupulous landlord, because would you really explain chapter and verse to any potential tenant, knowing that if you did, they probably wouldn't want to rent your flat?
It's so hard. It's so difficult for them. And one of the main issues in this case, I mentioned Notting Hill Genesis, they are the freeholders, they own the building. They say that the building, as it is now, doesn't actually match the drawings that they were provided with. It was built by a company called Hill. They had a design and build contract. Yes. And so now what you've got is these two companies basically fighting it out. They're in settlement discussions. They're sort of battling. There's one particular bit of correspondence I've seen suggests that Hill suggests part of one building is below 18 metres, and Notting Hill Genesis say, no, it's above 18 metres. You've got issues like this, which will drag out for months, if not years.
Because of the money at stake.
Before the works can even actually start, before these people can have their flats made safe and they can try and sell and move on.
Got another lead for you here. Rachel Peter in Manchester has been in touch. He's in what appears to be an identical situation, so you can talk to him after the programme. And there is no light at the end of the tunnel then, whatsoever.
At the moment, as I said, it is about watching and waiting. There will be some people who will try and sublet in terms of actually getting out of the building, but financially they're of course still locked in, and it's just a case of watching and waiting. If by some miracle a decision can be made, money can be found and they start to pay the works, it's still going to be months and months of these works carrying out. And because the ESW1 certificates are now required pretty much universally by buildings with cladding, there will be many more buildings slowly sort of finding issues like this, because actually what's fascinating about this case is the cladding seems to be safe. That was installed properly. There were other issues that were found.
The cavities around the windows.
Cavities, the insulation, the concrete barriers that you mentioned.
There could be people listening. Crikey, we've got enough to worry about at the moment, but there could be people listening to this who don't realise they're in a similar situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess the bigger the block, the more likely it is to have come out because somebody else would have sought to sell and realise they can't get the certificate.
Yeah, and higher blocks are being prioritised at the moment. So I've spoken to one woman who's in a much shorter block and she can't sell because they haven't got the certificate, but her housing association says they've got many other buildings which they need to put through to get the form first because they're much higher, and obviously the stakes are much more severe.
Well, the Building Safety Register is one of those organs that dedicates all the time in the world to these sort of issues, and you've won their approval this morning. Great to hear Rachael Venables on LBC bringing to life the human impact of building safety and mitigation such as alarm systems and WW time for action from the government. Rachel, thank you.
Thanks.
It's coming up to 11:45. Do get in touch with me or directly with Rachael. Rachael.Venables at global.com, presumably, is it?
Yeah.
If you have an issue in this field that you feel might benefit from her coruscating light.